Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon, and I do get to ride with you. I look forward to spending time with you. Absolutely, I do. We are syndicated. You can find us on Abundant Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. Another way you can find us is on the radio. It's the biggest country station in South Carolina, WZLA. A lot of you Alabama folks are now listening to that show online, so we appreciate you doing that as well. You can also find us another way, and that's on yournews.com. It's a new platform, and I get to be in the beta part of that, and I'm really proud of that. And it's just another way to get the truth out there to you, because the legacy media is sometimes just not feeding you the truth. I'm going to say probably about 99.9% of the time you're not getting it. If you want to get the truth, now, again, do your own research about things, okay? Don't just everything I feed at you either. So just go out and do your own research. Use your own brain that God gave you. And I promise you, if you give it a little exercise, you'll start learning more. Absolutely. We've got Barry and Kathi Holcomb with us right now. And by the way, continue sending email, Donna@donnasedge.com. They're back to being regular status on the show again. We appreciate that as well. But any questions for them, send those to Donna@donnasedge.com, Donna@donnasedge.com. Hey, guys, how are you doing?
Doing well.
We're fine. Enjoying a little bit of cooler weather here in Northeast Mississippi after all the hot days. I guess we still have more to come. It's been a wet summer around here. Thankfully got us out of the drought conditions, but I can't keep my grass under control.
Yeah, well, that's what Phil says. You know, if I ever want it to rain, I don't do any rain dances. I just go cut the grass.
That's it. Wash your car, cut the grass. I mean, both of them work pretty effective. But we're doing fine right here in Northeast Mississippi. Been a busy summer. I've been on the road a good bit, and I'm back and forth to Nashville seeing kids, and to New Orleans for graduation, and we've been to Alaska, and really kind of settle down for the fall and get over the busy schedule.
You know something? There's really no need to ever travel out of the country. I mean, Alaska is a beautiful place.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just breathtaking. The views are just out there, and the air is so crisp and so clean in the parts we were at. But I'm a fishmonger. That's what I'd be going for.
Yeah. We had plenty of good seafood. We were on Princess Cruise Lines and had a great time. The food was excellent. The views were great. We sailed out of Seattle, Washington, and the views of Mount Rainier were just gorgeous. Leaving port and heading out to sea, and wound up in Juneau, Alaska, Skagway, Alaska, where we took the train ride and crossed the Canadian border for just a few minutes. Ketchikan, Vancouver, British Columbia. It was a great trip.
Victoria,
British Columbia. I get confused on all those foreign lands there. But we're glad to be kind of settled back down. School has started here in Belmont. It seems like it's just been a quick summer, but a busy one here in Belmont. And we're just continuing to try to share truth with people that brings transformation to lives.
Let me ask you a question, because people are looking for the truth now. I mean, in everything, even in media, they're looking for the truth in politics. They're looking for the truth actually in God, in Sunday school, going back to church, hearing the truth. People feel like they're not being told the truth in so many different ways. A lot of churches don't want to get involved. They're afraid they'll hurt someone's feelings. We're living in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so one of my frequent guests on the show there was a lady who was with a business. I forgot the name of it. But anyway, she would counsel with women who were thinking about having abortions. And so she came to my business. They were having an event at their church. And I said, I've got a bunch of ink pens that you can have. And they were about the counseling for women who were thinking about having abortions. And she said, I'll be glad to take those as giveaways. But she comes back the next day and she said, I got to bring them back. And I said, why? The pastor did not want her sending those ink pens out to women because he was afraid some women would have their feelings hurt because some of their daughters had abortions.
Wow.
What do you say about that?
It's a tough issue. Yeah, I mean, I have dealt with that. I don't know of any way that the truth will never offend people. Jesus said he didn't come to bring unity. He said, I came to drive division between even families. The truth sometimes divides, and it's a matter of the condition of people's hearts. I'm afraid we have a generation of pastors who are seeking more and more to entertain their congregations and not offend them. You can start with Joel Osteen, but you can take it to every city that I know of, every place where there are churches, and there are churches that are just becoming more and more entertainment based, sermon series that are not based on the Bible, based on a movie theme. So it becomes this, concern that we will offend people and they won't come back to our church. Well, if we're more concerned with that than making disciples, maybe we're in the wrong line of work. So I just think truth is always going to be offensive. But look, truth is what sets people free. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." So that's the rub. People have a real problem with truth, especially when it's biblical truth and it conflicts with everything that they're learning in society and how society's changed and how more and more things are acceptable, no matter how wicked and despicable they may be.
Well, I'll tell you, this is another thing I admire about Kathi, because I know Kathi would tell me the truth. If she saw me struggling with something, she would tell me in a loving way, of course. But I really wouldn't care if you yelled at me. I'm at the age now, I don't care anymore. So, if you see me about to fall off of a cliff, you better yell at me to make sure you get my attention. And some of us have to have it a little bit loud. But what I'm saying is if you really love somebody and you say they're about to mess their life up, they're about to make a mistake about something, you need to talk with them.
Sure.
And tell them the truth.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, with like Barry's going through this sermon series on the Remember the Way and talking about the things that are through the trials of life, which, for sure the trial we went through is not uncommon to man, the scripture says. Men go through it. Men and women go through trial. Trial is there for a purpose and a reason. And so I think that pastors, anybody in ministry, and really honestly, any Christian needs to be real before people, because that is what I think, going back to what you said, first of all, that's what people want to see. That's what this generation is wanting to see. Transparency, vulnerability, reality. How, don't just preach at me. Don't just say, this is it. This is what it is, but live it out in front of me. And one of the things that Barry and I have heard from people just within young couples in our congregation, and even some older couples, older people, they've said, you know what? We are so glad that y'all share what you've been through, because then we feel like, man, we're not just alone in this. And we see that even the pastor, can go through difficulties, and not just go through them, but struggle, stumble, and I just think we've got to be real. I think the church, we sometimes forget I'll use Paul's scripture. He says, and such were some of you. Such were some of you. And he listed homosexuals in that. He listed some other things in that. And he said, and such were some of you, but now in Christ you are this. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I think the outside world sometimes sees the church as better than, or, I remember when I was in college or even in high school, sometimes I was called a holy roller. Just stuff that the world will always kind of be offended by truth. But I do think when we come to share truth, we can do it from a place of, hey, you know what? I've been there. And such was I. I may not have been this or this or this, but I was this. And I think they appreciate that, and then are more open, to truth that you would speak because you've been there. I just think that's so important.
Well, I've told Phil about this several times. My show is I have all kinds of different segments, and I talk to a lot of politicians on the air. And those are probably my less favorite ones. But anyway, I do it anyway because people need the information. They need the truth.
Sure.
But I've told Phil 1,000 times, I said, you know what I would like to hear some guy who's running for office say while they're out there campaigning? I would like for him to say, you know what? I was really stupid and I made a mistake. And it could be like an affair or whatever. And if they would do it before the reporters get to that story, I think it'd be a lot better. Because you're the one who's getting the story. You're not trying to hide anything. You're just saying, I did it. I was dumb. I made a dumb mistake, you know. And I think people are just looking for that, just let, I mean, I want to use President Trump for an example. I'm just telling you, when he came out on the campaign trail, I thought it was refreshing. It was just kind of like, whoa, finally somebody's just saying something. They're not trying to water it down or anything. I think we've just had such watered down everything, watered down in service, whether that's the government, in churches. A lot of pastors have watered it down, and it's watered down so much that it doesn't taste like cola anymore. It tastes like cola that's been sitting in melted ice. It doesn't taste good anymore.
Right. Sure.
One of the most encouraging things I've heard recently from just a member of the congregation, I'm sharing some sermons that are based on some conflict and trial we went through back in 2012, which was life-changing. And I shared just this past Sunday how what we went through caused some financial instability, and behind on a mortgage, on the verge of foreclosure, just some of the real struggles we went through. And one of the things I think people are looking for is for truth that's couched in terms of authenticity, where they know the one speaking the truth and preaching the truth is not just trying to sell you a bill of goods, but to say, this is what I went through and this is what brought me on stream. This is what brought me out of it. So for my congregation, for them just to hear, I've been through the real struggles that they go through. I'm not immune to that, and I don't try to hide that fact. And I hear what you're saying about politicians. I think it's very difficult for people in high profile positions, whether you're a pastor or a politician, to admit you've been wrong or to admit you messed up. What you see is, no, I'm going to say something and you're going to disagree with it, and then I'm going to come around and double down on it and tell you how much more right I am now than when I said it, last week, and it was horribly wrong then. It's even more wrong now, but I'm going to double down on it because we feel like we have to save face or we can't admit wrong. And people are looking for, whether it's politicians or preachers, people that are authentic and real and have been there and done that, and then have some valuable lessons to convey about how do you change? How do you change your perspective on all the things in life that are hard and yucky and miserable? How can your perspective go from focusing on the negative to reclarifying what God does in the midst of that? And so that's kind of
one thing is just hearing truth. The preachers who do the name it and claim it stuff, you just wish upon a star and all of a sudden you've got all the money in the world coming down from heaven. No, we got to work. You ask God, of course, to help you. You got to tithe. There's so many different things that are associated with doing this. It's not, I'm just going to wish upon a star. It doesn't work that way.
Well,
you can't be a lazy person to expect to make a living.
Yeah, these preachers have gotten rich on fleecing the flock, though. So they'll preach to you about miracles and you name it and claim it. But then at the end of the service, they're saying, now, I want 100 of you to come up here and sow a seed of $250. Well, who are you sowing the seed to, God or the preacher? The modern day prophets or the modern day so-called apostles. There's a new one that's come up on the horizon, a lady named Catherine Crick, a self-proclaimed apostle. Yet at the heart of all of that kind of ministry is, send me your money, and then I'll lay hands on you. Even recently, Donna, and I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but that's okay. Even recently, I saw a video clip of Paula White Kane, and she is from Tupelo, Mississippi. She is married to one of the musicians in the popular band Journey, and she is President Trump's chief spiritual advisor. And I saw
scares me.
Yes, it should scare you. So there was a service where she was saying, I want so many people to bring up a seed of so many dollars, And so she looked at the altar and said, there's only 3 envelopes up here. She goes, I'm not going to do ministry, and I'm not going to lay hands on anyone until y'all are obedient and give what I've told you to give. Well, who can trust that kind of ministry? And unfortunately, our president is trusting advice spiritually from someone of that terrible.
Now, she's been married numerous times as well. There's so many things that really the folks should be questioning this stuff. So my son called me one day and he said, Mom, I am really bothered about President Trump's advisor in the ministry. I am worried, but I'm concerned about that woman. And I said, well, I am too. And he said, I'm going to write him a letter. So he wrote a letter several months, it was close to his birthday, it was around May. And he said, I'm just going to send it to him. He might not even look at it. And he may even have advisors that look at it, and he never even touches it. So President Trump sent him a letter about 3 weeks ago. It took a while. We'd forgotten about it. And he gets a letter through the mail that's from President Trump thanking him for the advice. You know, of course, Brad mentioned Franklin Graham and a couple others, but you've got, even in business, in business, whether you're in business, ministry, or whatever, you've got to have the right advisors. If you don't have the right ones, they're going to lead you down the wrong path.
Well, sure, and that's true. And so Trump has a multitude of spiritual advisors around him. And I mean, I'm just going to mention one because he's up there in front of the cameras all the time. But you have men like Robert Jeffress, who's the pastor at First Baptist Church, Dallas, Texas. And so he's up there arm in arm with Paula White. And so all of a sudden, someone who should be able to be trusted as a trusted spiritual advisor, now all of a sudden, I don't think he's trustworthy because he is willing to stand hand in hand, arm in arm with someone who is not. So,
well, our grandparents were right. Birds of a feather flock together. That is the truth. There's no better truth than that. Let's go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. Now, if you're in Barry and Kathi Holcomb's neck of the woods, that's going to be the Central Time Zone. Is that correct?
Central, that's right.
Same as Alabama. So, that's going to be 1 p.m. But now you can find Barry and Kathi on a lot of our social media sites. If you go to facebook.com/DFeasel, you'll be able to go into the search section there and type in Barry and Kathi Holcomb and my name. You'll be able to pull up all the shows that we've all done. So if you want to go back and see some of the earlier shows, you'll be able to do that as well. But guys, again, thank you so much for being with me. So, man, the right advisor is important in your life, right?
Absolutely. Can you see us?
Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Camera right there. Let me see if I can get the camera going up again here. Hold on just a minute.
Okay, let me do this. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel that, and let me go ahead and put the commercial break in, and we'll get Phil to. I'll loop that, and let me go ahead and put.
There we are. I think no. Make that noise.
So I'll just tell Phil that we've got the commercial break going on. So I'll just tell him to make sure he looks for the extended, and he'll see it.
I'm not sure why we messed out, Donna. Do we need to try to come back in?
Yeah, just go out and come back in. Okay, let me add you in. There you are.
All
Okay.
right. Have you got
Let's
us on audio now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Let's go back in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. We're back, guys. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television and radio podcast talk show. Thank you again so much for watching Monday through Friday, beginning 2 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone. Barry and Kathy live in Mississippi. That would be Central for you guys. So if you want to find them, it'll be 1 o'clock if you've listened live. Another way you can also find them is if you're at work right now, don't get into trouble, okay? You got to obey the person who pays your paycheck. So make sure you're not messing around watching this show then. But you can go back on Facebook.com and /D Feazell and go into the search area, type in Barry and Kathi Holcomb and Donna Feazell, and you'll be able to pull up all the past shows and be able to see some of those that are lined up. You'll see that they are very steadfast. They don't change on anything. Okay, so it's only the God biblical truth out there. Okay, we've got just about 9 minutes left in this segment. And I know you guys have some things you want to make sure that we talk about today. So I'll just turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, so in the few minutes we have left, let me just try to give a little bit of biblical hope to people who may be struggling with various circumstances. And so what we have learned through a forced resignation, you might call it a termination from a church in 2012, and it was life-changing. It affected my sense of identity, our sense of community, financially, everything in life. I mean, we spent 7 years to the day out of the ministry. And believe it or not, January will be 8 years that we've been back in full-time gospel ministry at Calvary Baptist Church in Belmont, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. But our ministry is called Home to Heart Ministry. You can find us at hometoheartministry.com. But we've been working on a project called Remember the Way, and it is a workbook for pastors who've been wounded. But the principles that we found there are for everyone. And so the first biblical case study that we have written involves the life of Elijah. And there's a key truth that we saw in Elijah's life, and the background passages are from 1 Kings 18 and 19. And really, it goes all the way back to 1 Kings 16, where the Bible records a king, Ahab, son of Omri, coming on the scene as king of the northern kingdom of Israel. And the scripture there in 1 Kings 16 says he did more evil than any king before him. And so this was about 875 years before Christ. And so the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are divided. And here in the northern kingdom, Ahab comes on the scene. And Elijah, the prophet of God, stood up to him and his wicked wife. So Ahab, an Israelite, married a Phoenician princess named Jezebel. We heard the term Jezebel in the segment a few minutes ago. Well, she really was a wicked king. So as a queen, she promoted the worship of Baal, a Canaanite Phoenician fertility god. And so Ahab and Jezebel led the people astray. And so most people are familiar with the story of Elijah on Mount Carmel in his battle with the 450 prophets of Baal, where each of them built an altar, each of them put a sacrifice on it, and each of them sought to call down fire from heaven from their God. Well, we know the story. The prophets of Baal failed. There was no fire from heaven. And so Elijah tore down their altar. He built an appropriate altar, and he put a sacrifice on it, and he put the wood under it to burn it, and then he had the entire thing drenched with water. So much water that it was filling trenches that were dug around the altar. And he has this great victory there on Mount Carmel. And we've been there. Back in 2010, we went to Israel. You can still go up on top of Mount Carmel and to the site where most scholars believe that actual battle took place. And so he has this great victory. He slays the prophets of Baal. And then the next day, Jezebel said, well, I'm going to kill you. Basically, she threatened his life and said, I will make you like one of my prophets by about this time tomorrow. And so he fled. And so he had this great victory. And I think every person goes through this, times of high, levels of victory. And then we have these, threats in life that come upon us. And so what happened was Elijah's perspective changed. He stopped looking at the God who could bring victory, and he started looking at the wicked queen who could take his life. And so he fled from Mount Carmel about several hundred miles to the south to Mount Horeb, which was basically Mount Sinai. And so his ministry demonstrates that God remains sovereign even when evil appears to dominate, and he always preserves a faithful witness for himself, and that was in the life of Elijah. But what had to change before his circumstances changed was his perspective. And so 1 Kings 18 and 19 teaches us that God doesn't change, his promises don't change, his calling doesn't change, but sometimes our circumstances change. And with the change of circumstances, from positive to negative comes a change of perspective and this woe is me mentality. So basically the story records how Elijah fled and he found a cave there on Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, and really just crawled up in a fetal position and said, well, I'm the only prophet left and they seek to take my life. And why should I go on living? And so it was a very difficult time. And so he rose up to minister for the Lord in a time of moral corruption, spiritual corruption, corruption from the throne. I mean, it compares to what we're seeing in government today. But God continued to use him. And so ultimately, he ran out, from the Mount Horeb and continued to confront the sin. He felt like all was over, but God allowed him then to select his replacement. He went and tapped Elisha as the prophet of God to follow him. He appointed kings, and then God took him up, and he didn't even see death. And so the main thing about Elijah is he had to look back and remember God's power. And so without having more time to go into that, I would just say to people who are struggling, look backward. I mean, sometimes, Donna, we have to look back into the past in order to move forward into a more fruitful, productive future. And remember the ways of God. So the children of Israel, Moses told them before they entered the land of promise, after 40 years of wandering, he said, you will remember all the ways the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years. And yes, he humbled them. He let them be hungry. He tested them to see what was in their heart, whether they would obey his commands or not. But he ultimately led that next generation into the land of promise, the land he had promised them. So he's always faithful. And we're here just to help people. If anyone needs to reach out to us, we'd be glad to talk to anyone. They can reach us by email, bholcomb78@gmail.com. They can find us on hometoheartministry.com. You can call me if you want to. The number is 256-460-8615. We're here to help. We'll hopefully have biblical truth to share with people. But our heart is to help people remember the faithful ways of God and to know that they can look back and see his faithfulness and then move forward knowing what he's done in the past and what he will do in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And what you mentioned in an earlier segment, we were talking about, the government, our own government is trying to take history away. We've got to know the history.
Yes.
So we don't fall back and do some of the crazy decisions as a nation that we've done before. That's extremely important.
The crazy decision for, the Democrat Socialists of America. I mean, they have more people registered in that party now than they've ever had in their history. Yet they fail to remember socialism has never worked anywhere. Mm-hmm. But we have a segment of our political realm trying to move us back to that. It's a huge step backward. It's a danger.
You know what's scarier than the people who are actually trying to be the leaders of that nonsense? Is the people who vote for them. We have that many people. I know there's been a lot of cheating stuff going on, but I'm just telling you, if 1 million people are for that in this country, that's still trouble.
Yes.
Right.
Because that can multiply very fast.
Yes.
Right. And so the job for the church is to stand up and be counted as the body of Christ, to be salt and light in this wicked and depraved generation, to speak the truth in love, but to speak the truth nonetheless. And the truth will always go back to what the scripture teaches. That is our only benchmark. That's where we stand. That's where we rise. That's where we fall. We have nothing more or less to share than what God says in his word.
Absolutely. Guys, we got to call it a day. Can you believe how quick it goes by? Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you guys so much for watching the show. We appreciate that. Continue sending email. Now, Barry and Kathi are going to be back on regular again. So you need to send email, Donna@donnasedge.com, Donna@donnasedge.com. And I promise you it's going to be a huge help, and you'll hear the truth in the answers as well. We definitely appreciate that. Guys, take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Donna.
Take care.